The afternoon sun streamed through the skylights of Riverside Mall, casting long shadows across the polished floors as shoppers hurried past with their bags and bustling conversations. Margaret Thompson, known to everyone as Maggie, pushed her granddaughter Emily's stroller slowly past the array of storefronts, her weathered hands gripping the handles with the careful attention of someone who had raised 3 children and now treasured every moment with this precious little one. Emily, barely 18 months old, sat upright in her stroller with the alert curiosity that only toddlers possessed. Her bright blue eyes darted from the colorful displays in shop windows to the faces of passing strangers, taking in every detail of this bustling world around her. Today had been particularly special because Maggie had promised to take her to see the new toy store that had opened on the 2nd floor, but first they needed to stop by Henderson's department store to return a sweater that didn't quite fit. The mall was unusually crowded for a Tuesday afternoon. Families with children moved in clusters, teenagers gathered around the food court, and elderly couples strolled hand in hand, enjoying the air conditioning and the social atmosphere. The sound of fountains bubbling mixed with conversations in multiple languages, creating the familiar symphony of American retail life. Maggie paused in front of Henderson's large display window, studying a mannequin dressed in an elegant navy dress that caught her eye. She had always appreciated fine clothing, even though her budget these days was more modest than it had been during her working years as a school principal. Emily seemed content to watch the people walking by, occasionally pointing at colorful outfits or interesting hairstyles with the uninhibited fascination of childhood. As Maggie contemplated whether the dress would look good on her daughter Sarah, Emily's behavior suddenly changed. The little girl began making soft cooing sounds, her tiny finger extended towards something that wasn't immediately visible to her grandmother. At first, Maggie assumed Emily was pointing at another child or perhaps a particularly bright store sign, but the intensity of the baby's focus suggested something more specific had captured her attention. Emily's pointing became more insistent, accompanied by the urgent babbling that Maggie had learned to recognize as her granddaughter's way of communicating something important. The baby's small body strained against the stroller's safety harness, her entire being focused on whatever had caught her eye near the base of what appeared to be a temporarily closed escalator about 20 feet away. Maggie followed Emily's gaze, squinting slightly as she tried to discern what had captured the child's attention so completely. The escalator in question had orange safety cones placed at its base and a maintenance sign indicating it was out of service. To most adults hurrying past, it was simply another minor inconvenience in their shopping experience, easily ignored, as they sought alternative routes to the upper levels. But Emily's pointing became increasingly animated, her soft babbling growing louder and more urgent. She began to rock back and forth in her stroller, a behavior Maggie recognized as a sign that something was genuinely troubling or exciting her granddaughter. Other shoppers began to glance in their direction, some smiling at what they assumed was simply a fussy toddler, others looking mildly annoyed at the disruption to their peaceful shopping experience. Maggie bent down to Emily's level, speaking in the gentle, soothing tone she had perfected over decades of working with children. "Oh, what is it, sweetheart? What do you see over there?" She followed the direction of Emily's pointing more carefully, scanning the area around the disabled escalator for anything that might have drawn the child's attention. The metallic structure of the escalator cast deep shadows, making it difficult to see clearly into the recessed spaces beneath its base. Maggie noticed that several shoppers had walked past the area without pausing, their attention focused on their destinations rather than the darkened corners of the mall's infrastructure. The maintenance sign suggested that repairs were ongoing, which would explain why the area seemed somewhat neglected and why few people lingered nearby. Emily's vocalizations grew more insistent, her small voice carrying a note that Maggie had never heard before. It wasn't the usual sounds of hunger, tiredness, or simple frustration that she had become so adept at interpreting. This was something different, something that seemed to carry an urgency that transcended the normal communications between grandmother and granddaughter. A young couple walking past paused momentarily, the woman smiling at Emily's animated pointing. "Someone's very interested in something over there," she commented to Maggie with the easy familiarity that strangers often shared when observing children's behavior. "Maybe she sees something we adults are missing." The comment struck Maggie as more prophetic than the stranger could have realized. Children often notice things that adults overlooked, their attention not yet filtered by the preoccupations and assumptions that came with years of experience. Emily's persistence suggested that whatever had caught her attention was significant, at least from her perspective. As Maggie continued to study the area around the escalator, she began to notice subtle details that hadn't been immediately apparent. The shadows seemed deeper than they should have been, and occasionally she thought she detected a slight movement that couldn't be attributed to the normal air circulation of the mall's ventilation system. Emily's pointing had now attracted the attention of several other shoppers, creating a small cluster of curious onlookers who were more interested in solving the mystery of what had captivated the toddler than in continuing with their shopping. A security guard stationed near the jewelry store had also begun to take notice of the gathering crowd. Officer James Patterson, a veteran of mall security who had seen everything from lost children to medical emergencies, approached the group with the measured pace of someone accustomed to managing various situations with calm professionalism. His presence brought a sense of official attention to what had begun as a simple moment between grandmother and granddaughter. "Everything all right here, folks?" Officer Patterson asked, his tone friendly but alert. He had learned over the years that even the most innocent situations could sometimes escalate unexpectedly, and maintaining a proactive approach often prevented larger problems from developing. Maggie looked up at the security officer, feeling slightly self-conscious about the small commotion Emily had created. "My granddaughter seems very focused on something over by that escalator," she explained, gesturing toward the disabled machinery. "She's not usually this persistent about anything, so I'm curious about what might have caught her attention." Officer Patterson followed their gaze toward the escalator, his trained eyes automatically scanning for anything that might pose a security concern or safety hazard. The area appeared normal from his perspective, just another piece of temporarily disabled equipment in a facility that required constant maintenance and updates. However, Emily's continued pointing and increasingly urgent vocalizations suggested that a closer investigation might be warranted. As the small group of observers continued to grow, Emily's behavior became even more animated, her small body practically vibrating with the effort to communicate something that existed beyond her limited vocabulary. Her pointing had become so intense that her entire arm trembled with the effort, and her vocalizations had evolved into a series of sounds that seemed to carry an emotional weight that transcended normal infant communication. The afternoon was about to take an unexpected turn that would transform a routine shopping trip into something none of them would ever forget. Officer Patterson's years of experience had taught him to trust his instincts, and the unusual persistence of the child's behavior warranted closer examination. "Let's take a look over there," he suggested to Maggie, his tone remaining casual, but his attention now fully focused on the area Emily had been indicating. "Sometimes kids notice things we adults walk right past." As they approached the disabled escalator, the ambient noise of the mall seemed to fade slightly, replaced by a heightened awareness of their immediate surroundings. The maintenance cones created a barrier that most shoppers instinctively respected, steering clear of the area without giving it much thought. But now, with Emily's continued agitation serving as their guide, the space demanded closer scrutiny. Maggie maneuvered the stroller carefully around the safety barriers, Emily's excitement growing with each step closer to whatever had captured her attention. The little girl's vocalizations had evolved into a series of urgent sounds that seemed to increase in intensity as they drew nearer to the escalator's base. Her small hands now gripped the sides of her stroller, her entire body leaning forward with anticipation. "I don't see anything unusual," Officer Patterson murmured, but his voice carried a note of uncertainty as he began to examine the shadowed recesses beneath the escalator structure more carefully. The lighting in this particular area was dimmer than the rest of the mall, creating pockets of darkness that could easily conceal smaller objects or details. Then they heard it. A sound, so faint that it almost blended with the mechanical humming of the mall's ventilation system. It was a low, rhythmic whimpering that seemed to emanate from somewhere deep within the escalator's mechanical housing. Officer Patterson immediately crouched down, his trained ear now catching what Emily's more sensitive hearing had detected long before any of the adults. "There's definitely something under there," he said, his voice taking on the authoritative tone he used when situations required immediate attention. He pulled out his flashlight and directed its beam into the darker recesses of the escalator's base, the light revealing mechanical components, support beams, and then something that made his breath catch in his throat. A pair of dark, intelligent eyes reflected back at them from the shadows, accompanied by the unmistakable outline of a German shepherd's distinctive ears and muzzle. The dog was wedged beneath a section of the escalator's support structure, its position suggesting that it had either crawled under seeking shelter and become trapped, or had somehow fallen into the space during the escalator's operation. "Good Lord," Maggie whispered, her hand instinctively reaching toward Emily, who had suddenly become very still, as if sensing that her persistent communication had finally been understood. "There's a dog trapped under there." The German shepherd's condition was immediately apparent, even in the limited light. The animal was conscious but clearly exhausted, its breathing labored and its movements restricted by the metal framework that had become its prison. Dried saliva around its muzzle suggested it had been trapped for some time, and the way it held one of its front paws indicated possible injury. Officer Patterson immediately radioed for backup, his voice calm but urgent as he requested additional security personnel and contacted mall maintenance. "We have an animal rescue situation near the north escalator on the first floor," he reported. "Need maintenance, emergency response, and possibly animal control." Emily, as if understanding that her mission had been accomplished, finally relaxed. In her stroller, though her eyes remained fixed on the trapped animal with an intensity that spoke to some deep connection between the innocent child and the suffering creature. Her babbling had transformed into softer, almost comforting sounds, as if she were trying to soothe the frightened animal from her position several feet away. Within minutes, the small gathering of curious shoppers had grown into a more substantial crowd as word spread through the mall about the trapped dog. Social media posts began appearing almost immediately, with photos and videos capturing the dramatic scene of the rescue effort beginning to unfold. The hashtag #MallRescue started trending locally as the story captured the attention of animal lovers throughout the city. David Chen, the mall's head of maintenance, arrived with a team of technicians carrying various tools and equipment. His initial assessment of the situation was sobering. The German shepherd had somehow become wedged beneath a critical support beam that couldn't be simply moved without potentially compromising the escalator's structural integrity. "This is more complicated than I initially thought," Chen explained to Officer Patterson and the growing crowd of concerned onlookers. "The dog's position means we can't just lift the panel. We need to partially disassemble part of the escalator mechanism, which requires specific tools and safety protocols. This type of operation could take several hours if we follow standard procedures." The rescue operation was further complicated by the dog's obvious distress and the fact that any sudden movements or loud noises might cause the animal to panic and potentially injure itself further in its attempts to escape. The German Shepherd's intelligent eyes tracked every movement of the humans gathering around its prison, showing both hope and wariness in equal measure. Sarah Mitchell, a veterinary technician who happened to be shopping in the mall, pushed through the crowd when she heard about the situation. Her professional training immediately kicked in as she assessed the animal's condition from a distance. "From what I can see, the dog appears dehydrated and possibly injured, but stable," she announced to the rescue team. However, time is definitely a factor here. Extended entrapment can lead to serious complications, including circulation problems and psychological trauma. Emily continued to watch the proceedings with the focused attention that had started the entire rescue effort. Occasionally, she would reach out toward the trapped animal, her small hand opening and closing as if trying to offer comfort across the distance that separated them. Several onlookers commented on the remarkable connection between the child and the dog, with many attributing the discovery entirely to Emily's persistent communication. The growing crowd included shoppers of all ages, but it was particularly notable how many children had been drawn to the scene. Parents found themselves explaining the situation to curious young minds, creating impromptu lessons about animal welfare, community cooperation, and the importance of helping those in need. Mall manager Robert Williams arrived on the scene, his expression grave as he surveyed the situation and the growing crowd. The presence of local news crews, who had been alerted by social media posts, added another layer of complexity to what was already a challenging rescue operation. The story of the baby who had discovered the trapped dog was exactly the kind of human interest piece that captured public attention. "We need to balance the safety of the animal with the safety of our shoppers and staff," Williams announced to the assembled crowd. "This rescue operation needs to be conducted professionally and carefully, even if it takes additional time. We're dealing with both an animal welfare issue and a significant structural engineering challenge." The tension in the air was palpable as various rescue scenarios were discussed and debated. Some members of the crowd advocated for immediate action, arguing that every minute of delay increased the animal's suffering. Others, particularly those with construction or engineering backgrounds, supported the more cautious approach that prioritized both human and animal safety. Dr. Amanda Foster, a local veterinarian who had been contacted by social media reports, arrived with emergency medical supplies for animals. Her presence provided additional professional support for the rescue effort, but also confirmed the seriousness of the situation. "German Shepherds are resilient animals," she explained to the gathered crowd, "but prolonged entrapment can lead to serious complications including dehydration, circulation problems, and severe psychological trauma that could affect the animal's behavior permanently." The veterinarian's assessment added medical urgency to what had already been an emotionally charged situation. The German Shepherd's condition was clearly deteriorating, with visible signs of stress and exhaustion that concerned everyone present. His attempts to free himself had become weaker and less frequent, suggesting that his energy reserves were becoming depleted. As the afternoon progressed, the mall rescue had evolved from a simple shopping trip to a community effort that had drawn together strangers united by their concern for the trapped animal. Emily, still seated in her stroller at the center of it all, had become an unlikely hero whose innocent perception had set in motion a chain of events that would soon reveal much more than anyone could have anticipated. The rescue operation was about to enter its most critical phase, with decisions that would determine not only the fate of the trapped German shepherd, but also uncover a story that none of them could have imagined. The tension in the air grew thicker as the rescue team faced the reality of the complex operation ahead. David Chen's maintenance crew had arrived with hydraulic jacks and precision tools, but the head of mall security, Captain Frank Rodriguez, had serious concerns about proceeding without proper authorization from corporate headquarters and insurance clearance. "I understand everyone's emotional investment in this situation," Captain Rodriguez announced to the assembled crowd, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to making difficult decisions under pressure. "But we have protocols in place for a reason. Any damage to mall property during an unauthorized rescue attempt could result in significant liability issues." The crowd's reaction was immediate and vocal. Shoppers who had initially gathered out of curiosity had become emotionally invested in the outcome, and Rodriguez's emphasis on procedures over the animals' welfare struck many as callous and bureaucratic. Social media posts began reflecting the growing frustration with what appeared to be administrative obstacles to a humanitarian rescue effort. "Are you seriously going to let that poor animal suffer while you worry about paperwork?" demanded Janet Morrison, a local teacher who had been shopping with her own children when she heard about the situation. Her voice carried the righteous indignation of someone accustomed to advocating for those who couldn't speak for themselves. Emily, still positioned at the center of the growing controversy, began to show signs of distress as the voices around her grew louder and more agitated. Maggie noticed her granddaughter's discomfort and began gently rocking the stroller while speaking in soothing tones. But Emily's attention remained fixed on the trapped German shepherd, whose own agitation seemed to mirror the emotional intensity of the human drama unfolding around him. Dr. Foster approached Captain Rodriguez with professional calm, her veterinary training providing her with the credibility to address his concerns directly. "Captain, I can provide written assessment that delay significantly increases the risk of permanent injury or worse outcomes for this animal," she stated. "From a liability standpoint, failure to act when professional rescue was available might create even greater exposure." Officer Patterson found himself caught between his respect for chain of command and his growing conviction that immediate action was necessary. His years of experience had taught him to recognize situations where protocol needed to yield to practical necessity. But Captain Rodriguez was his superior, and openly defying orders would have serious professional consequences. The German shepherd's condition provided a heartbreaking counterpoint to the human debate. The animal's breathing had become more labored, and its attempts to shift position within the confined space were clearly causing additional discomfort. Every whimper from the trapped dog seemed to increase the emotional pressure on everyone involved in the rescue decision. "Look at that baby," called out Marcus Thompson, a construction worker who had stopped to observe the situation. She knew something was wrong before any of us adults figured it out. Maybe we should trust that instinct instead of hiding behind bureaucracy. Emily's role in the discovery had taken on almost mythical proportions in the minds of the crowd. The image of an innocent child succeeding where adults had failed resonated powerfully with everyone present, creating additional pressure on Captain Rodriguez to find a solution that balanced safety with compassion. Sarah Mitchell, the veterinary technician, had been quietly observing the German shepherd's behavior and noticed something that had escaped everyone else's attention. Near the base of the escalator, Partially hidden beneath a loose piece of safety tarp was a small brown leather bag that appeared to have been overlooked in the initial excitement of discovering the trapped animal. "Has anyone noticed that bag? Over there," she asked, pointing to the object that had caught her attention. "It might be connected to how the dog ended up in this situation." Officer Patterson immediately moved to examine the bag, his training dictating that any potential evidence should be handled carefully. The leather showed signs of wear and exposure to moisture, suggesting it had been in its current location for at least several hours, possibly longer. With careful movements, he lifted the bag and opened it to reveal its contents. Inside were several items that immediately changed the context of the entire situation. A well-worn leather collar with a brass nameplate, a small plastic bag containing what appeared to be medication, a folded piece of paper that looked like a letter, and a professional-looking identification tag that bore official emergency response. "Symbols. The collar has a name on it," Patterson announced to the crowd. "Rex. And there's an address in Millfield." He paused as he examined the identification tag more closely. "This looks like some kind of official rescue certification." Dr. Foster immediately moved closer to examine the items, her professional interest piqued by the mention of medication and rescue certification. "May I see that medication?" she asked. When Patterson handed her the plastic bag, her expression grew serious. "This is prescription pain medication for dogs, the kind typically used for working animals that might be injured in the field." The letter, when carefully unfolded, revealed handwriting that spoke of desperate searching and heartbreaking worry. The crowd grew quiet as Officer Patterson read selected portions aloud. "Rex has been missing for 3 days. Last seen during flood rescue operations in Millfield. Trained search and rescue dog. Please contact immediately if found." The revelation that the trapped German Shepherd was not simply a lost pet, but a working rescue animal, added an entirely new dimension to the situation. The irony was not lost on anyone present. A dog trained to save others was now the one desperately in need of rescue, trapped in a situation that his own training and dedication had likely contributed to. Captain Rodriguez felt the shift in atmosphere as the crowd's emotional investment deepened with this new information. The story of a heroic rescue dog, trapped and suffering while bureaucracy delayed his salvation, was exactly the kind of narrative that could create significant public relations problems for the mall and his own security department. "The owner's contact information is in this letter," Patterson continued, pulling out his phone. "I'm going to call them immediately. They need to know we've found Rex." Emily, who had been unusually quiet during the adults' debate, suddenly began making soft sounds again, her attention focused not on the trapped dog, but on something else that had captured her notice. Following her gaze, Maggie realized that her granddaughter was now pointing toward a different area near the escalator, where maintenance equipment had been staged for the rescue operation. "She's trying to tell us something else," Maggie said, her voice carrying the conviction of someone who had learned to trust her granddaughter's remarkable perceptiveness. "Emily hasn't been wrong yet today." The maintenance crew, which had been waiting for authorization to begin the rescue operation, followed Emily's pointing to discover that she had identified the location of the emergency release mechanism that David Chen had been searching for. The manual override system, designed for exactly this type of situation, had been partially concealed by safety equipment and would have taken additional time to locate without Emily's guidance. "Unbelievable," Chen muttered as he examined the mechanism that Emily had somehow identified. "That little girl has better instincts than some of my trained technicians. This system hasn't been activated in years, and even I wasn't certain of its exact location." The discovery of the manual release system provided Captain Rodriguez with the solution he needed to balance protocol with practical necessity. emergency. Procedures existed for exactly this type of situation, and the presence of professional veterinary support meant that the rescue could proceed with appropriate medical oversight. The legal department would understand that emergency protocols superseded normal operational procedures when life was at stake. Local news anchor Jennifer Walsh had arrived on scene with her camera crew, immediately recognizing the human interest, potential of the story. The image of an 18-month-old child directing the rescue of a trapped dog had all the elements of a compelling news piece that would resonate with viewers across the region. Her presence added another layer of public attention to an already emotionally charged situation. This is exactly the kind of community response story that reminds us what's best about humanity, Walsh commented to her camera operator as they set up to document the rescue operation, a child's innocent perception leading to the rescue of a heroic animal. It doesn't get much more compelling than that. Social media posts about the rescue had begun circulating beyond the immediate mall community, with hashtags like Team Baby Hero and Team Mall Rescue gaining traction across various platforms. Photos and videos taken by shoppers were being shared and reshared, creating a viral story that was attracting attention from animal rescue organizations and child development experts alike. Dr. Patricia Williams, a child psychologist who happened to be shopping in the mall, had stopped to observe Emily's behavior throughout the crisis. Her professional interest was piqued by the remarkable persistence and apparent understanding that the toddler had demonstrated throughout the afternoon. "What we're witnessing here is extraordinary," Dr. Williams explained to anyone who would listen. "Children Emily's age typically have very short attention spans and limited ability to communicate complex observations. Her sustained focus and effective communication about Rex's situation suggests cognitive abilities that are quite remarkable for her age." As preparations for the actual rescue operation began, the crowd's mood shifted from frustration to anticipation. Rex's story had transformed him from a random animal in distress to a hero deserving of every effort to secure his freedom and recovery. The afternoon that had begun as a simple shopping trip for Maggie and Emily was about to reach its most critical phase, with implications that would extend far beyond the immediate rescue operation. The emergency release mechanism that Emily had somehow identified proved to be the key to beginning Rex's rescue, but activating it required careful coordination between multiple team members. David Chen's maintenance crew worked with precision born of years of experience, while Dr. Foster positioned herself as close as possible to monitor Rex's condition throughout the delicate operation. "Everyone needs to stay back while we activate the hydraulic system," Chen announced to the crowd, his voice carrying the authority of someone who understood the serious nature of what they were attempting. "This mechanism hasn't been used since the escalator was installed 5 years ago, so we need to proceed carefully." Officer Patterson had successfully contacted Rex's owner, whose voice over the phone had carried such relief and anxiety that everyone nearby could sense the emotional weight of the conversation. "Michael Stevens is driving here from Millfield right now," Patterson reported to the rescue team. "He's been searching for Rex for 3 days and nights. This dog apparently saved 4 people during the recent flooding before he disappeared." The revelation about Rex's heroic actions during the flood rescue added another layer of urgency to the operation. The assembled crowd now understood that they weren't just saving any animal, but a certified hero whose own life had been dedicated to helping others in emergency situations. The irony of Rex needing rescue himself resonated powerfully with everyone present. Emily had become strangely calm as the rescue operation began, her earlier agitation replaced by an almost otherworldly focus on the proceedings. Maggie noticed that her granddaughter seemed to be studying every detail of the rescue effort, her bright eyes tracking the movements of each team member with the intensity of someone much older and more experienced. The first attempt to activate the release mechanism produced a grinding sound that sent a collective shiver through the crowd. The hydraulic system, unused for years, required several attempts before it began to function properly. Rex, sensing the vibration and movement around him, began to whimper more loudly, his distress clearly audible to everyone present. "Easy, boy," Dr. Foster called softly toward the trapped dog, her veterinary training helping her maintain calm. Professionalism, even as her own emotions were engaged by the dramatic rescue. "We're going to get you out of there." The technical complexity of the rescue operation became apparent as Chen's team discovered that simply activating the release mechanism wasn't sufficient to free Rex. The German Shepherd's position required lifting a specific section of the escalator framework while simultaneously ensuring that other structural elements remained stable and safe. "We need additional hydraulic support," Chen announced after his initial assessment of the mechanism's capabilities. "The dog's position means we have to lift this entire section, which requires more equipment than we have immediately available." Captain Rodriguez, who had been monitoring the situation from a professional distance, found himself facing a new dilemma. Ordering additional equipment would require several hours, time that Rex might not have given his deteriorating condition. The crowd's growing impatience was becoming increasingly difficult to manage, and social media coverage was attracting even more attention to the mall rescue operation. Marcus Thompson, the construction worker who had been observing the technical challenges, stepped forward with a suggestion that surprised everyone present. "I've got a hydraulic jack system in my truck that might work for this," he offered. "It's designed for emergency situations exactly like this one." The offer represented exactly the kind of community cooperation that had made the rescue effort possible, but it also created additional liability concerns for mall management. Using non-mall equipment operated by someone not officially authorized created potential legal complications that Captain Rodriguez couldn't ignore. "I appreciate the offer," Rodriguez responded carefully, "but insurance regulations require that only certified mall maintenance personnel operate equipment in situations like this." Dr. Foster, who had been monitoring Rex's condition throughout the debate, decided that professional medical opinion needed to override bureaucratic concerns. "As the veterinary professional on scene, I'm stating that this animal's condition is deteriorating," she announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Delay significantly increases the risk of permanent injury." Emily, who had been quietly observing the adult discussions, suddenly began making the urgent sounds that had started the entire rescue operation. But this time, her attention was focused on something different. Rex himself, who appeared to be trying to communicate something through his positioning and movements. "Look at the dog," Sarah Mitchell called out, her veterinary technician training helping her interpret Rex's behavior. "He's trying to show us something about his position. See how he's holding his front paw? I think he's indicating where the pressure point is." Rex's intelligence as a trained rescue dog was becoming apparent even in his trapped condition. Despite his pain and exhaustion, he seemed to understand that the humans were trying to help him, and he was attempting to provide guidance for his own rescue. His movements, though limited, appeared purposeful rather than random. The realization that Rex was actively participating in his own rescue created a new sense of urgency and hope among the assembled crowd. If a trained rescue dog believed that escape was possible, then the human rescue team needed to find a way to make it happen. Chen made the decision that would define the next phase of the operation. "We're going to use Mr. Thompson's equipment," he announced, accepting the liability risk in favor of immediate action. "But we do this under my supervision and..." Following emergency protocols, the crowd erupted in spontaneous applause as Thompson hurried to retrieve his hydraulic equipment from his truck in the parking lot. The decision represented a triumph of practical compassion over bureaucratic caution, exactly the kind of resolution that the emotionally invested crowd had been hoping to see. While Thompson retrieved his equipment, Dr. Foster took the opportunity to get as close as possible to Rex, speaking to him in the calm, professional tones that veterinarians use to comfort frightened animals. "We're going to get you out, Rex," she promised. "Your owner is on his way, and everyone here is working to help you." Rex's response to Dr. Foster's voice was immediate and touching. Despite his obvious pain and exhaustion, his tail attempted a weak wag, and his intelligent eyes focused on her face with unmistakable gratitude. The connection between the professional rescuer and the trapped rescue dog created a moment of pure, emotional resonance that affected everyone present. Emily chose this moment to lean forward in her stroller and extend her small hand toward Rex, her fingers barely reaching into the space where he was trapped. What happened next surprised everyone. Rex, despite his pain, managed to move his nose just enough to briefly touch Emily's outstretched fingers. The simple contact between the innocent child who had discovered him and the heroic dog who needed rescue created a moment of such powerful symbolism that several people in the crowd began to cry. The image of innocence and heroism connecting across species and circumstance embodied everything that made the rescue effort meaningful. Thompson returned with his hydraulic equipment just as this touching moment concluded, and the real work of freeing Rex was about to begin. The afternoon was approaching its most critical phase, where technical expertise, community cooperation, and pure determination would determine whether this remarkable rescue story would have the happy ending that everyone desperately wanted to see. Thompson's hydraulic equipment proved to be more sophisticated than anyone had expected, featuring digital controls and safety sensors that would provide the precise pressure management needed for such a delicate operation. However, integrating the external system with the mall's escalator mechanism required technical expertise that pushed the limits of what the maintenance team had encountered before. "This is going to be a slow process," Chen warned the assembled crowd as his team began connecting Thompson's hydraulic system to the escalator's framework. "We need to maintain constant pressure while monitoring structural integrity. One wrong move could either injure Rex further or cause significant damage to the mall infrastructure." The technical setup required nearly 30 minutes, during which Rex's condition continued to be a source of growing concern. Dr. Foster had managed to provide him with small amounts of water using a long syringe, but his breathing remained labored and his responses were becoming more sluggish. Emily had remained remarkably patient throughout the extended preparation, but as the actual lift operation began, she became increasingly agitated. Her small hands gripped the sides of her stroller, and she began making the urgent vocalizations that had characterized her earlier communications about Rex's situation. "She's trying to tell us something again," Maggie observed, her confidence in her granddaughter's perceptiveness now absolute after everything they had witnessed. "Emily hasn't been wrong about anything today." The first attempt to activate the combined hydraulic system produced immediate results. The escalator framework began to rise slowly and steadily, creating the space that Rex needed to escape his metal prison. The crowd held its collective breath as the operation proceeded exactly as planned, with Rex's position gradually becoming less constrained. But just as success seemed certain, a mechanical grinding sound indicated that something was going wrong. The hydraulic system shuddered, and the escalator framework stopped rising, leaving Rex still partially trapped, but now in an even more precarious position than before. "The pressure sensors are detecting resistance," Thompson announced, his own concern evident as he studied the digital readouts on his equipment. Something is binding in the mechanism that we didn't anticipate. Chen's examination of the situation revealed the problem. Rex's position had shifted during the lifting process, and his injured paw was now caught in a different part of the framework. The very movement that was supposed to free him had created a new trap that was potentially more dangerous than the original situation. "We can't continue lifting without risking serious injury to his paw," Dr. Foster announced, after getting as close as possible to assess Rex's new position. "But we also can't lower the framework back down without trapping him even more securely than before." The rescue operation had reached a critical impasse that tested the resolve and creativity of everyone involved. Rex, sensing the increased tension among his would-be rescuers, began to whimper more urgently, his distress adding emotional pressure to what was already a technically challenging situation. Captain Rodriguez, who had been supportive of the rescue effort since the discovery of Rex's heroic background, found himself facing the worst-case scenario he had been trying to avoid. The rescue attempt had created a situation that was potentially more dangerous than the original problem, with significant liability implications for the mall and everyone involved. "We need professional emergency rescue personnel," Rodriguez announced, reaching for his radio to contact the city's emergency services. "This situation has gone beyond what mall security and maintenance can safely handle." The suggestion that outside emergency services needed to be called created immediate controversy among the crowd. Many people argued that additional delay would only increase Rex's suffering, while others recognized that the current situation required expertise that simply wasn't available among the volunteers who had been leading the rescue effort. Emily's agitation reached a new level as the debate continued around her, her vocalizations becoming more urgent and her pointing becoming more specific. But now, instead of pointing toward Rex, she was indicating something else entirely, a section of the escalator framework that no one had been paying attention to. Sarah Mitchell, who had been watching Emily's behavior throughout the afternoon, decided to follow the child's guidance once again. Moving to the area Emily was indicating, she discovered something that had been overlooked in the focus on the main hydraulic operation, a secondary release mechanism that could be operated manually. "There's another control here," Mitchell called out, her discovery immediately capturing everyone's attention. "It looks like it's designed to release individual sections of the framework independently. There are actually multiple backup systems built into this escalator that none of us knew about." Chen rushed to examine Mitchell's discovery, his expression brightening as he realized the implications of what Emily had identified. "This is a backup system for exactly this type of situation," he explained to the rescue team. "We can use this to release just the section that's trapping Rex's paw without affecting the main lift operation. The engineers who designed this really thought of everything." The crowd watched with renewed hope as Chen studied the secondary mechanism, noting that it appeared to be a completely independent system that could operate even if the main hydraulic controls failed. The discovery represented exactly the kind of technical solution that could break the deadlock that had been threatening the rescue operation. Thompson examined his equipment readings and confirmed that the main hydraulic system could maintain pressure indefinitely while the secondary controls were operated. "My system is designed for exactly this kind of coordination," he assured the rescue team. "We can run both operations simultaneously without any safety concerns." The secondary system required careful coordination between multiple operators, but it offered the precise control needed to address Rex's specific predicament. Thompson's hydraulic equipment would maintain pressure on the main framework, while Chen operated the manual release to free Rex's trapped paw. Dr. Foster positioned herself where she could monitor Rex's vital signs throughout the coordinated operation, her veterinary training providing crucial medical oversight as the rescue team prepared for their most complex procedure yet. Her portable medical equipment allowed her to track Rex's heart rate and breathing patterns, ensuring that any signs of distress would be immediately detected. "Everyone needs to be absolutely still while we do this," Dr. Foster instructed the crowd, her veterinary training emphasizing the importance of calm surroundings during such a delicate procedure. Any sudden noise or movement could cause Rex to panic and injure himself further. We need complete silence and cooperation from everyone present. The manual release operation began with Chen carefully engaging the secondary mechanism, while Thompson monitored hydraulic pressure and Dr. Foster watched Rex for any signs of distress. The sound of metal moving against metal filled the air as the framework began to shift in small, precise increments, each movement carefully calculated to avoid causing additional trauma to the trapped animal. Jennifer Walsh and her news crew documented every moment of the coordinated rescue effort, recognizing that they were witnessing something truly extraordinary. The combination of professional expertise, community cooperation, and innovative problem-solving was creating exactly the kind of inspirational story that would resonate with audiences far beyond the immediate mall community. Rex, demonstrating the intelligence and training that had made him an effective rescue dog, seemed to understand that he needed to remain as still as possible during the operation. Despite his obvious pain and fear, he stopped struggling and allowed the rescue team to work around his trapped paw with minimal resistance, his professional training overriding his natural instinct to escape. The critical moment arrived as the secondary release mechanism reached the point where Rex's paw should have been freed. But instead of the expected success, there was another grinding sound that indicated continued resistance. The German Shepherd's paw remained trapped, and the rescue team was running out of technical options. "The framework is more damaged than we initially realized," Chen announced, his voice carrying the frustration of someone who had exhausted his technical expertise. "Rex's struggle to escape has bent some of the metal components in ways that our equipment can't address. We're dealing with structural damage that's beyond our current capabilities." Dr. Foster's assessment of Rex's condition during this latest setback was sobering. "He's showing signs of shock," she reported to the rescue team, her medical training, helping her recognize the subtle changes in Rex's behavior and breathing patterns. "His breathing is becoming more shallow, and his responses are getting weaker. We're approaching the point where delay becomes life-threatening." The rescue operation had reached its darkest moment, with technical challenges that seemed insurmountable, and Rex's condition deteriorating with each passing minute. The crowd, that had been so hopeful just moments before, now faced the possibility that their heroic efforts might not be enough to save the dog who had dedicated his life to saving others. Emily, who had been the catalyst for everything that had happened that afternoon, made one final contribution to the rescue effort. In a movement so sudden that it surprised everyone present, she managed to lean far enough out of her stroller to place her small hand directly on Rex's nose, establishing a connection that seemed to calm both the trapped animal and the anxious humans surrounding him. The calming effect of Emily's touch on Rex was immediate and remarkable. The German Shepherd's labored breathing became more regular, and his frightened whimpering subsided into softer sounds that suggested relief rather than panic. Dr. Foster observed this interaction with professional amazement, noting how the simple contact between child and animal had achieved what medical intervention had been unable to accomplish. "That's incredible," she murmured to Maggie, her voice filled with genuine wonder. "I've never seen an animal respond so positively to human contact in such a stressful situation. Your granddaughter has an extraordinary gift. The moment of peace created by Emily's intervention provided the rescue team with an opportunity to reassess their options without the pressure of Rex's distressed vocalizations. Chen took advantage of the calmer atmosphere to examine the trapped paw more carefully, using his flashlight to identify exactly where the metal framework was creating the obstruction. "I think I can see the problem now," he announced, his voice carrying renewed hope. Rex's paw isn't actually caught in the framework itself. It's tangled in some cable or rope that's wrapped around the metal. If we can cut that material, he should be able to free himself. The discovery that Rex's trap was caused by external material rather than the escalator mechanism itself changed everything about the rescue operation. Instead of requiring complex hydraulic procedures, the solution might be as simple as cutting through whatever was binding his paw to the framework. Thompson immediately began searching through his equipment for appropriate cutting tools, while Dr. Foster prepared to monitor Rex closely during what they all hoped would be the final phase of his rescue. The crowd's mood shifted from despair back to cautious optimism as news of the potential solution spread through the assembled onlookers. Just as Chen was preparing to begin the cutting operation, a commotion at the edge of the crowd indicated the arrival of someone who immediately commanded attention. Michael Stevens, Rex's owner, pushed through the gathered people with the urgent determination of someone who had been searching desperately for his missing companion. Stevens was a man in his early 40s, wearing the practical clothing of someone involved in emergency services work. His face showed the strain of 3 sleepless nights spent searching for Rex, but his eyes lit up with relief and joy as he caught sight of his trapped partner. "Rex!" Stevens called out, his voice carrying a mixture of relief, love, and professional authority. "Easy, boy. I'm here now." Rex's response to his owner's voice was electric. Despite his trapped condition and obvious exhaustion, the German Shepherd's entire demeanor changed as he recognized the familiar sound of the person he had been trained to work with and protect. His tail began wagging weakly, and he attempted to turn his head towards Stevens despite the limitations of his position. The reunion between Stevens and Rex, even under such difficult circumstances, created an emotional moment that affected everyone present. The bond between the professional rescue worker and his 4-legged partner was immediately apparent, representing years of training, shared dangers, and mutual dependence that transcended the normal relationship between human and animal. "Thank you," Stevens said to the assembled crowd, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you all for finding him and working so hard to get him out. Rex is more than just my partner. He saved so many lives over the years, including 4 people just 3 days ago during the Millfield flooding." Stevens' arrival provided the missing piece of Rex's story that transformed the rescue operation. From a simple animal welfare issue to something much more significant. As he explained Rex's background to the crowd, the full magnitude of the German Shepherd's contributions became clear. "Rex and I have been working search and rescue for 8 years, Stevens continued, his professional pride evident despite his emotional state. He's certified in water rescue, disaster response, and missing person location. During the recent flooding in Millfield, he located 2 children who had been swept away by the current and helped me reach 2 elderly residents who were trapped in their flooded home." The revelation that Rex had disappeared during rescue operations, rather than simply wandering away, added heroic significance to his current predicament. The irony that a dog who had dedicated his life to saving others was now trapped and helpless was not lost on anyone present, and it intensified everyone's determination to complete his rescue successfully. Dr. Foster approached Stevens to discuss Rex's medical condition and the rescue procedures that had been attempted. Her professional consultation with Rex's owner provided additional insight into the German Shepherd's physical capabilities and limitations, information that would be crucial for the final rescue attempt. Has Rex ever been trapped in confined spaces before? Dr. Foster asked, her question aimed at understanding how the dog might react to the cutting operation. He's trained for tight space rescue work, Stevens replied, so he knows how to stay calm in confined situations. But he's never been the needing rescue before. This must be terrifying for him. Emily, who had been observing the reunion between Stevens and Rex with fascination, began making soft sounds that drew the owner's attention to her for the first time. When Stevens looked at the small child who had been responsible for discovering his partner, his expression showed immediate understanding of the significance of what had occurred. "You're the little girl who found him," Stevens said to Emily, his voice filled with gratitude. "Officer Patterson told me over the phone that a baby had spotted Rex when none of the adults noticed. I can't thank you enough." The acknowledgement of Emily's role in the rescue by Rex's owner created a moment of recognition that elevated the child's contribution from fortunate accident to genuine heroism. The crowd's appreciation for Emily's persistence and perceptiveness had been growing throughout the afternoon, but Stevens' professional validation carried special weight. With Rex's owner now present to provide guidance and reassurance, Chen felt confident proceeding with the cutting operation. Stevens positioned himself where Rex could see and hear him, providing the emotional support that only the dog's partner could offer during the stressful procedure. "Okay, Rex," Stevens said in the calm, authoritative tone he used during rescue operations. "Stay still, boy. These people are going to help get you out." The cutting operation began with Chen carefully maneuvering his tools into the confined space where Rex's paw was trapped. The material that had been binding the German Shepherd proved to be a section of nylon rope, probably debris from the recent flooding that had somehow become wrapped around Rex's leg during his earlier rescue work. As Chen worked to cut through the rope, Rex remained remarkably calm, responding to Stevens' presence and Emily's continued gentle contact with a level of cooperation that amazed everyone involved in the rescue. The combination of professional expertise, community support, and innocent compassion had created the perfect conditions for success. The moment when the rope finally separated was marked by an immediate change in Rex's posture. Freed from the binding that had held his paw, he was able to shift his position slightly, creating enough space for the hydraulic system to complete the lifting operation that would allow him to escape from beneath the escalator framework. "He's free," Dr. Foster announced, as Rex began to move under his own power for the first time in hours. "He's actually moving on his own." The successful completion of Rex's rescue created an explosion of celebration among the crowd that had invested so much emotional energy in the outcome. Applause, cheers, and spontaneous embraces marked the moment when community cooperation and determination had triumphed over technical challenges and bureaucratic obstacles. Rex emerged from beneath the escalator framework with the dignified bearing of a professional rescue dog, despite his obvious exhaustion and the slight limp that favored his recently freed paw. His reunion with Michael Stevens was immediate and emotional, with the German Shepherd leaning against his partner's legs while Stevens knelt to carefully examine his condition. Dr. Foster's initial medical assessment revealed that while Rex was dehydrated and had suffered some minor injuries to his trapped paw, his overall condition was remarkably good considering his ordeal. "He's going to need veterinary care and rest," she announced to the relieved crowd, "but this is one tough, resilient animal. His rescue training probably helped him conserve energy and stay calm during the worst moments." The crowd's celebration continued as Rex, supported by Stevens and monitored by Dr. Foster, took his first tentative steps as a free dog. His tail, though weak, maintained a steady wag that seemed to acknowledge and thank each person who had contributed to his rescue. The sight of the heroic German Shepherd walking freely after hours of entrapment created an emotional climax that left few eyes dry among the assembled onlookers. Emily, still seated in her stroller at the center of the drama she had initiated, watched Rex's emergence with the satisfied expression of someone who had accomplished exactly what she had set out to do. Her earlier agitation had completely disappeared, replaced by a calm contentment that suggested she understood the significance of what had been achieved. "I still can't believe that little girl spotted him when none of us adults noticed anything wrong," marveled Janet Morrison, the teacher who had been one of the most vocal advocates for immediate rescue action. "It's like she had some kind of special connection to Rex." Stevens, who had spent years working with rescue animals and understanding their unique capabilities, offered his own perspective on Emily's remarkable contribution. "Animals and small children often communicate in ways that adults miss," he explained to the crowd. "Rex probably sensed Emily's presence and somehow managed to get her attention when he couldn't reach anyone else." The local news crews that had been covering the rescue operation conducted impromptu interviews with key participants, creating a record of the afternoon's events that would soon spread far beyond Riverside Mall. The story of the baby who discovered the trapped rescue dog had all the elements of a compelling human interest piece that would resonate with audiences across the region. Captain Rodriguez, who had initially been focused on protocols and liability concerns, found himself in the unexpected position of being praised for his eventual support of the rescue operation. His decision to allow the use of Thompson's equipment had been crucial to the successful outcome, and he graciously accepted credit for enabling the community cooperation that had made Rex's rescue possible. "This whole situation taught me something important about balancing procedures with human compassion," Rodriguez admitted to the news reporters. "Sometimes the right thing to do requires flexibility and trust in people's good intentions." Mall manager Robert Williams announced that Riverside Mall would be implementing new emergency procedures specifically designed to handle animal rescue situations more efficiently in the future. "We learned a lot today about community response and emergency protocols," he stated. "Rex's rescue has shown us areas where we can improve our emergency preparedness." As the immediate excitement of the rescue began to settle, Stevens took the opportunity to tell the assembled crowd more about Rex's background and the work they did together. His stories of their search and rescue missions painted a picture of dedication, courage, and the special bond between professional partners who trusted each other with their lives. Rex has been responsible for saving dozens of lives over the years, Stevens explained, his hand resting protectively on his partner's head. He's worked everything from wilderness searches for lost hikers to disaster response after tornadoes and floods. The flooding in Millfield 3 days ago was just his most recent mission. The revelation that Rex had disappeared while helping with flood rescue efforts added another layer of significance to the afternoon's events. The dog's dedication to helping others had literally led to his own need for rescue, creating a circle of service and community support that touched everyone present. Dr. Foster, who had provided crucial medical expertise throughout the rescue, announced that she would be providing follow-up veterinary care for Rex at no charge. "Any animal that has served the community the way Rex has deserves the best medical attention we can provide," she declared, earning spontaneous applause from the crowd. 3 weeks later, Riverside Mall held a special ceremony to commemorate the rescue operation that had brought the community together in such a remarkable way. A bronze plaque was installed near the escalator where Rex had been trapped, telling the story of the baby whose alertness and persistence had led to the discovery and rescue of a heroic search and rescue dog. The plaque read, "On this site, 18-month-old Emily Thompson demonstrated that heroes come in all sizes. Her persistence in communicating what she had observed led to the rescue of Rex, a certified search and rescue dog who has dedicated his life to saving others. This memorial honors the power of community cooperation and the importance of listening to those who cannot yet speak." Emily, now walking confidently and beginning to say her first words, attended the dedication ceremony with Maggie, who had become something of a local celebrity as the grandmother of the miracle baby who had spotted Rex. The media attention had been overwhelming at times, but both Maggie and Emily seemed to take their newfound fame in stride. Rex, fully recovered from his ordeal and back to active duty with Stevens, served as the guest of honor at the ceremony. His presence attracted children and adults alike, all eager to meet the dog whose rescue had demonstrated the best of human nature and community spirit. The ceremony concluded with Stevens and Rex demonstrating some of their search and rescue techniques, providing an educational component that helped the community understand the important work that rescue teams performed. Emily watched the demonstration with rapt attention, her bright eyes following every movement as if she were already planning her next contribution to emergency response. The story of Emily and Rex had evolved from a simple shopping trip to a testament to the power of paying attention to those who communicate in different ways. It had brought together strangers who became friends, highlighted the importance of both following protocols and knowing when to set them aside, and demonstrated that heroism could be found in the most unexpected places. As the community gathered, at Riverside Mall continued to grow through social media shares and word of mouth, the story reached thousands of people who found inspiration in the tale of the baby who saw what adults missed and the dog who had dedicated his life to helping others. The hashtag #JustBabyHeroRex began trending nationally, with people sharing their own stories of unexpected heroes and community cooperation. Local schools began incorporating Emily and Rex's story into their curricula as an example of the importance of persistence, observation, and community service. The tale became a favorite bedtime story for children throughout the region, teaching lessons about listening, helping others, and the special bonds that can exist between humans and animals. Children's hospitals reported that young patients found comfort in Emily's story, seeing themselves reflected in the young hero who had made such an important difference despite her age and inability to speak in conventional ways. Child development experts studied the case as an example of how young children could demonstrate remarkable perceptiveness and communication skills when properly observed and supported. The rescue had created lasting friendships among the participants. Maggie and Stevens maintained regular contact, with Rex visiting Emily periodically to reinforce the bond that had been forged during the rescue. Dr. Foster became Rex's regular veterinarian, providing ongoing care that ensured his continued health and effectiveness as a rescue dog. Marcus Thompson's construction company received numerous contracts as a result of his visibility during the rescue operation, with clients specifically requesting his services because of his demonstration of community spirit and emergency response capabilities. Captain Rodriguez implemented new training programs for mall security personnel based on lessons learned during the rescue operation. The Riverside Mall management established an annual Heroes Day celebration to commemorate the rescue and recognize other acts of community heroism throughout the year. The event became a popular community gathering that attracted families from across the region, with proceeds benefiting local animal rescue organizations and emergency response training programs. Emily's story became the subject of a children's book written by local author Margaret Casey, with all proceeds donated to search and rescue organizations. The book, titled The Little Girl Who Listened, became a bestseller in the region and was translated into multiple languages for international distribution. Research institutions studying child development and animal-human communication requested permission to study Emily's case, leading to new insights into how very young children process and respond to environmental stimuli. The scientific community recognized her story as an important case study in childhood perception and communication development. 6 months after the rescue, Rex was awarded the Regional Hero Animal Award by the State Emergency Services Department, with Emily serving as the special guest presenter. The ceremony, held at the state capitol, provided official recognition of Rex's service record and the remarkable circumstances of his rescue. The afternoon that had begun as a routine shopping trip for Maggie and Emily had transformed into a celebration of everything that made communities strong. It proved that heroes existed in every generation, that courage came in many forms, and that the most important voices were sometimes the ones that spoke without words. The legacy of Emily and Rex's story continued to inspire acts of kindness and community cooperation throughout the region. Emergency response organizations reported increased volunteer applications, animal rescue groups saw expanded support, and community organizations found renewed enthusiasm for collaborative projects that brought diverse groups together for common causes. As Emily grew older and began to speak her first words, one of her favorites was Rex, spoken with the same insistent tone she had used on that memorable afternoon at Riverside Mall. The bond forged during the rescue remained strong, serving as a foundation for a lifelong friendship that would continue to inspire everyone who witnessed their remarkable connection. Dear listeners, we hope that Emily and Rex's incredible story has touched your hearts as deeply as it moved everyone who witnessed their remarkable rescue. This tale of an 18-month-old hero and a courageous rescue dog proves that heroism knows no age, and that the most important voices are sometimes the ones we need to listen to most carefully. If this story inspired you, we invite you to explore our special playlist of equally captivating stories by clicking to your left. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Every day we bring you unique stories that explore the complexity of life and the power of human connection. We have more incredible tales waiting for you, and we can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Join our community of story lovers, and let's continue this emotional journey together.